Welcome to Hollywood Latest Reports. In a deeply emotional and rare public address, Pastor Amir Tsarfati took a moment that moved countless hearts around the world. Known for his passionate sermons and firm stance on biblical prophecy, Tsarfati surprised his audience when he spoke with sincerity and compassion about the suffering of children in Palestine. It wasn't a political statement, nor an attempt to take sides. It was a human cry for empathy, unity, and peace. A moment that captured millions. The moment began during a recent conference where Tsarfati was scheduled to speak about hope and faith in times of uncertainty. The room was filled with thousands, and the live broadcast reached millions across various platforms. But halfway through his message, his tone softened, his eyes grew moist, and his voice trembled. He began to speak about the pain and fear that children in war-torn regions experience, particularly in Gaza and surrounding areas. A child should never have to grow up afraid of the sky above them, he said quietly. The words echoed across the hall and through the screens of those watching around the world. What made his message powerful was that it came not from politics, but from compassion. Tsarfati made it clear he was not addressing nations or governments. He was addressing humanity, a plea beyond borders. In his address, Tsarfati emphasized the importance of love and mercy across all faiths. We can't let our differences define who deserves compassion, he continued. Every child, no matter where they are born, is a reflection of the same Creator. It was a simple statement, but it carried immense weight. Many in the audience were seen wiping tears. Viewers online began to flood comment sections with messages of support, thanking him for showing humanity beyond conflict lines. For years, Tsarfati has been known for speaking about prophecy and the role of nations in the Bible. Yet this time, his message wasn't about events or timelines. It was about people. Faith without compassion is empty, he said, pausing as the audience sat in silence. A message that transcended faith. Religious leaders from various backgrounds later acknowledged the speech. They described it as a necessary reminder that compassion is not bound by nationality or religion. Christian, Muslim, and Jewish communities all shared clips of his words, emphasizing that empathy is a divine calling. Social media lit up with reactions. Hashtags like #PrayForPeace, #ChildrenOfPalestine, and #FaithInHumanity began trending in several countries. What stood out was the tone. People weren't arguing or debating. Instead, they were reflecting, sharing, and praying together. Tsarfati's followers, many of whom have listened to him for years, said they had never seen him so emotional. One attendee shared, "I've heard Pastor Amir preach hundreds of times, but this was different. It felt like his heart broke for the world in front of us, breaking the walls of division." The world often finds itself divided by opinions, politics, and faith. But moments like this remind people that there's something deeper that connects everyone: humanity. Tsarfati's message didn't criticize, condemn, or blame. Instead, it focused on the pain of the innocent. He reminded his audience that war doesn't only destroy buildings, it destroys hope, childhoods, and futures. When a child cries because of fear, God hears it. It doesn't matter which language they speak or what flag they live under, he said. These words resonated across communities. It was as if Tsarfati had reminded the world that compassion is stronger than ideology. Global response. Within hours, clips of his emotional moments circulated on major platforms. Prominent figures from various faith communities praised his bravery for addressing such a sensitive issue with grace and balance. Many said his message was exactly what the world needed, a call to remember the innocent amidst chaos. Several Christian publications wrote editorials about his statement, calling it a voice of light in dark times. Others pointed out how rare it is for religious figures to publicly express empathy toward groups often seen as the other side. But Tsarfati was clear. His heart was not speaking for one side. When a child suffers, heaven does not see nationality. Heaven sees pain, he said. Faith leaders reflect. After the video went viral, various pastors and church leaders across the world began to include similar sentiments in their own sermons. Some said Tsarfati's emotional honesty reminded them of what true ministry is, serving others through compassion. In one interview later that week, a fellow pastor said, "It takes courage to speak for love in a world that rewards division." Amir reminded us that being human is more important than being right. The ripple effect continued to spread. From small community churches to online ministries, believers began dedicating prayers for peace in Palestine and Israel alike, for the children, for the mothers, and for the families caught in between. Humanity before headlines. What touched many people was Tsarfati's refusal to make the issue political. He spoke not of governments, but of people. He didn't debate. He prayed. That humility struck a chord. He reminded his audience that media headlines often make people forget the faces behind the statistics. Behind every number is a story, he said. Behind every tragedy, there is a family, a dream, a heartbeat that once believed tomorrow would be better. For those who have followed his ministry, this softer, more emotional side revealed a new layer of his character. His words reminded everyone that faith isn't just about prophecy, it's also about compassion and understanding. Tears on the stage. As his message reached its emotional peak, Tsarfati paused and looked down. The crowd sat in stillness. For a moment, no one spoke, and no sound filled the air except his trembling voice. If faith means anything, he whispered, it must mean love. Those words lingered long after the event ended. People later described how he stood there for several moments, silently praying, his eyes wet. Some said it was one of the most powerful displays of vulnerability they had ever seen from him. It wasn't planned, it wasn't scripted, it was real. And that's what made it unforgettable. Voices of gratitude. Across the world, letters and messages poured into his ministry. Parents, teachers, and even children sent notes expressing gratitude for his compassion. A mother from Gaza wrote, "Even though we may never meet, your words gave me strength to believe that someone still sees us." Another message came from a teacher in Israel who said, "I showed your video to my students. We cried together and prayed for all children, not just ours. You reminded us that empathy has no borders." The unity inspired by his words became a quiet movement, not political, but personal. People began to share stories of kindness, forgiveness, and faith across divides, a lesson in compassion. In the following weeks, Tsarfati continued to speak about compassion in his online sessions, emphasizing that faith must always include empathy. He reminded his audience that caring for others doesn't mean compromising beliefs. It means living them fully. He also mentioned that true believers should be peacemakers, not participants in hate. We can pray for peace without choosing sides. We can love without losing conviction, he said. This message resonated especially among the younger generation. Many said it inspired them to look at global issues through a more compassionate lens, one that sees people, not politics. A legacy of love. Weeks after the event, the moment continued to circulate online. Clips of his emotional prayer reached millions. Viewers continued to comment about how rare it is to see such vulnerability from a leader of faith. His tears spoke louder than words. One comment read. Another said, "It's easy to talk about peace, but it's powerful when someone truly feels it." For Tsarfati, that night was not about fame or attention. It was about faith in action, faith that comforts, heals, and reaches across the walls people build. Closing thoughts. In a world where voices are often raised in anger, Amir Tsarfati's heartfelt words became a quiet reminder of what truly matters: compassion, unity, and the innocence of children. He didn't call for sides to be taken. He called for hearts to be opened. And in doing so, he reminded millions that even in the darkest times, faith can still be a light that leads to understanding. As one viewer beautifully wrote, "When Amir spoke about the children of Palestine, I realized that love is the only message that never divides." And perhaps that was the very essence of his message, that no matter how far apart people may stand, humanity will always be the bridge that brings them closer. Days passed. But Amir Tsarfati's words didn't fade. They continued to echo across hearts, churches, and communities worldwide. Every time someone replayed the video, it reignited the same emotion, that moment of honesty when faith met humanity. In a time when people are often divided by borders and beliefs, Tsarfati's compassion seemed to unite people under one truth: that every life, especially that of a child, holds value beyond politics or religion. Love is the highest commandment, he had said, and those 6 words began appearing on banners, posts, and even in churches around the world. The video of his speech was translated into multiple languages: Arabic, Hebrew, English, and French, and shared across continents. It became a message not of controversy, but of comfort. Communities respond. In Bethlehem, a small group of believers gathered and watched his message on a projector, sitting in silence, some with tears, some with hope. One local pastor shared, "We have seen many leaders talk about our struggles, but rarely with such humility." He didn't speak as a politician, he spoke as a father. In the United States, several youth ministries used his message as part of their weekly reflections. Teenagers discussed what it meant to love beyond differences. One young listener said, "He showed me that compassion isn't weakness, it's courage." Even humanitarian organizations noticed the impact. Volunteers working with displaced families in Gaza and nearby areas shared how the renewed global attention helped them receive more prayers, support, and donations for children's food and medical aid. The world had grown quiet for a moment, listening, reflecting, and remembering what peace truly means. A deeper spiritual reflection. Later, Tsarfati shared a few words during a smaller gathering. He explained that his emotional breakdown on stage wasn't planned. Sometimes the weight of what we see around us breaks the strongest hearts, he said softly. And that's when God reminds us that love is not optional, it's essential. He described how the faces of children, smiling through hardship, surviving without security, haunted his thoughts. If one sermon doesn't touch our hearts for the helpless, then maybe our hearts need new direction, he said. His words weren't meant to make anyone feel guilt or sorrow, but rather compassion that leads to action, kindness, prayer, and unity. Beyond the pulpit, news channels and independent journalists picked up his message, noting that his approach had managed to humanize a conflict often seen through political lenses. Several commentators said it was refreshing to hear a voice that refused to polarize, instead focusing on love and faith as tools for healing. An article in one Christian magazine read, "In an age of arguments and divisions, Amir Tsarfati preached the simplest gospel of all, compassion." And indeed, the effect was global. Choir